Welcome, everybody, to Mom Street USA. My name is Jackie, aka Wishes Mama. And on today's episode of Mom Street USA, we are going to be tackling some of the most asked FAQs or frequently asked questions for Disney World. So, some of this information is review of things that we've already, dug a little deeper or talked about on our other Mom Street episodes. But I wanted to kind of give a one stop shop for somebody who may be just starting to plan their Disney trip, and what are some answers from my perspective for these questions that maybe would be helpful for somebody in that situation. We're here at the beginning of the year in 2026, so just wanted to kind of give that basis for anybody that might be just starting. So that is the goal for today. Again, like I mentioned, some of these, for those of you who have been around Mom Street USA for a while, a lot of this is stuff we've talked about in various different episodes. But again, this is just a one-stop shop for people that need it all in one place to help them kind of knock out some of those first questions that come to mind when they start to plan their trip to Disney. So we are focusing today on just Disney World. So if you're someone who is doing Disneyland, maybe we'll do a Disneyland one of these maybe next episode. What do you guys think? Let me know. But this is going to be focusing just on Disney World for today. So that is the plan. We're going to be going over the top 15 frequently asked questions that are, I guess, my top 15 that I feel like I get asked or I see get asked most often. So starting with, we're going to do 3 different categories. So we're going to talk about planning and first-time questions just for those kind of generic overview. We're going to talk about lightning lanes and some lines, and then we're going to talk about just logistics with kids and strollers and things like that. So kind of 3 different sections, 15 total FAQs that we're going to cover in today's episode. So starting off in our planning and first-time questions category, we're going to jump right into what I think is probably one of the top, if not the number one most asked question about Disney World is, what is the best age to take kids to Disney World? So here's the thing, and you'll hear so many different opinions and answers to this question. In my opinion, there is no bad age to take kids to Disney. I have had so much fun with infants at Disney that couldn't even walk yet. I have had equally just as much fun with elementary age kids. It really just depends on the kid and it depends on their interest level when it comes to the things in the parks. A couple things just to keep in mind. If they are under 3, they're free. So I was always someone that tried to take my kids at least once before they turned 3, because that was a little bit of a good way to save money and to give them some extra experiences that they could have with that money we saved. So saving money on their ticket allowed us to maybe book a character breakfast, things like that, when they were free to get into the parks. So that is something to keep in mind. But other than that, there's really no wrong age. There are attractions for all ages at the parks, right? That is part of the reason why the Disney parks were created. So there are attractions for 9-month-olds. There are attractions that are great for 3-year-olds. There are attractions that are amazing for 9, 10, 11-year-olds. So really, there's no bad age, and there's really no one answer to the best age. My favorite age, I think, to take my kiddos was around that 5, 6-year-old age, just because they were so in the magic, if that makes sense. They were in every character they wanted to wave to. They loved every show. They loved every ride. They loved all of the fireworks and the parades and all of that. So that age was a really, really fun age for me personally. But I'm also kind of looking forward to some of our upcoming trips as my kids get a little bit older. They are 9 and 7 right now. And as they get older, it's so much more fun because they've been several times. They get to be a part of the planning with us. So they get to help choose what rides we do. They get to have their opinions on, where they want to go or what character breakfast they might want to do or those types of things. On our last trip that we took in May, we did a big family trip with my extended family, but the last day was like just our family, and we gave the kids free reign of the day, and we said, okay, what rides do you want to do? Now, my oldest, he had like a really clear picture of, I want to do this ride at this park and this ride at this park. And, he wanted to do Expedition Everest and Dinosaur. He wanted to do Cosmic Rewind. He wanted to do Tron. All of those big rides. But then he also had a couple other rides, here and there that he wanted to do. Now, my younger one, who's 7, she has a harder time remembering what is where. My oldest, if you've been listening to Mom Street, he is a very much a map kid. He wants to look at the map, he wants to know, and he does know like what rides are at what parks. Uh he can, hear the name of a ride and know what park people are at. So like that is his jam. So he knew very easily where things were. My youngest had a little bit more of a hard time kind of deciding. And so it was fun to kind of guide her through that and say, oh, remember, you really love this ride. Is that something that you want to do today? And then she could pick, yes or no. And she ultimately chose some things like the Little Mermaid show at Hollywood Studios, the carousel. Girl has been a carousel lover for as long as I can remember. Her very first trip, she made us rope drop the carousel on our second day in Magic Kingdom. So like the carousel was a big thing for her. So she has some different rides that she likes, but that is so fun and was so fun. So I'm really looking forward to those older ages too, when they have a little bit more autonomy over the plans that we make. So really, there is so much for any age. It just all is about the approach to your trip and what your group is interested in as far as rides, experiences, those types of things. So that's my best way to answer that question. It's not a real concrete answer, but I feel like some of these, that's just the way that it happens, right? So the second question that we have is Disney World worth it with toddlers and babies? So I just sort of touched on this in the last question, but absolutely, 100%. There are so many things that your littles can do at the parks. There are characters, there are shows and experiences and live entertainment that they can enjoy, and they can go on a ton of rides. So you've got to think anything that does not have a height requirement is suitable for infants and toddlers to go on. So tons of stuff at Magic Kingdom. That's going to be where you get your biggest bang for your buck when it comes to park tickets with that age group. Epcot has a lot of really great dark rides and experiences there as well. Animal Kingdom, if your kiddo likes zoos and likes looking at animals, Animal Kingdom is a great place for you to take them. Hollywood Studios probably has the least for that age group just because they have the least number of no height requirement attractions, but they have the most shows and a ton of characters. So it really just depends on what it is that you're looking for and what you think that your kiddo at that age is going to like. But it is definitely worth it, especially if they're under 3, because they are free to take in and they just tag along with you and go where you go. So definitely worth it at that age. The next question that I have is, how many days do families need at Disney World? And this is, again, one of those questions that I feel like I am asked constantly online on our, content and social media. And here's what I suggest to families. If it is your first trip, but you anticipate coming back, or your second or third trip maybe, and you anticipate coming back, at Disney World, I would say 4 park days is a solid trip. You'll get to do the majority of what you want to do and still have a little bit of leeway and rest. Now, if you can do 4 park hopper days, that's even better, but it may not be within your budget, and that's totally fine. If you can just do those base tickets and do 1 park per day, you will get through mostly everything. Now, if this is a trip for you that is like a once in a lifetime trip, you don't know that you'll be back for 10 years, let's say maybe, then I would up that to maybe 6 days in the parks, just because Magic Kingdom really could use 2 days, and Hollywood Studios or even maybe Epcot could really use 2 days, depending on your group and the age, right? If you have some like more adults or older teens, then Epcot and Hollywood Studios could definitely use a second day. So I would up that number to 5 or 6 if this is, like, the one time we're going for the next decade. So, anywhere from 4 days to 6 days, you're in a really good place when it comes to how many days you think you need at Disney World. Um, the next question that I have is, when is the best time of year to visit Disney World with kids? So, it really depends on a lot of things. One, crowd level, right? That's ultimately what this question is getting at, but also weather can be a factor in that as well. The winter months, especially like December into January, February in Florida, can actually be fairly chilly. So if you have a group that does not do well in the cold, or you've got kiddos that don't do well in the cold, then maybe don't consider that time of year. I understand that, once they get to be school age, that school breaks are a thing you have to work around. And unfortunately, a lot of the spring break, and if you are someone that has like a fall break in October, those weeks are very, very, very busy. So it can get a little tricky there with that. If you have flexibility and you are somebody that you can kind of go whenever, your kids maybe have more flexibility with their schooling, or they're not quite school age yet, I would highly suggest um, September, like mid-September is a really nice time to go, after Labor Day, but before all of the craziness of Halloween really kicks up down in Orlando. So like the middle to the end of September is a really nice time to go. And then I would say like the second week of April into the first part of May is also a really nice time to go. Both of those times you're going to have some milder weather, and you should have, on average, lower crowds during that time. Now, that can always change because there are some things scattered in there you have to look out for. There are, Run Disney events. There are cheerleading competitions at the ESPN Wild World of Sports. There are dance competitions at ESPN. So there are other things sprinkled in there that you have to be aware of, and just kind of do some additional Googling or ask your travel agent, like, hey, are there any events in this time span that I should be looking at to make sure that I know what our plans should be and can kind of plan accordingly. But generally speaking, those would be my two suggestions on when to go, and when is the best time of year to take kids to Disney. And the last question in this little first part that we have is, can Disney World be overwhelming for kids? And I really love this question because I think it's so important to think about. And I think it's something that we as parents, and this is, the generic we, definitely not everybody, but we as parents can sometimes forget that something like a Disney park can be extremely overwhelming for our kids, especially if they haven't experienced something like that. If your kids are not used to going to busy zoos or the county fair with rides or other theme parks across the country, going somewhere like Disney is going to be total sensory shock for them, right? So just it can be overwhelming, but there are definitely things that you can do to help, right? First of all, you just need to be aware of your kiddo and what their tendencies are. Like my kiddos both have a tendency to shy away from loud noises. So that's something that my husband and I have always been aware of when we visited the parks, because we just know that about them. So we always make sure to bring headphones, or now that they're a little bit older, they have just like little earplugs that we bring with them. And they just know that they can ask me for them. They typically have their own bags now, but I still carry their little tiny earplugs, just because they are very easy to drop and lose. We almost lost my daughters in the dark walking around World Showcase on our last trip. But that is just something that we know about them, right? The other thing that you can do is do some research on where there are quiet spaces in the parks. And we've actually talked about this. Kate and I did an episode on it quite a ways back. We did an episode on visiting the parks with different kind of disabilities and things like that. So looking things up like that. And Disney actually has an entire guide on their website. If you search, um, sensory type of things on their website or, disability access on their website, you can find it. And if you have a hard time finding it, please let me know. Reach out. I can send you that link. But they actually have a whole list of places that they recommend as being more quiet spaces in their parks. So as long as you are aware and, tuned into what your kiddo may need, then you'll be perfectly fine when it comes to that. And just be aware that more breaks may be needed, some extra, water breaks or some extra time in a sit down restaurant are always a good idea if you have kiddos that get easily overwhelmed. Okay, so the next section that we're going to talk here about is some lightning lane questions because I do feel like lightning lanes are such a big part of the Disney World culture, and there are so many questions, so many questions about lightning lanes. So that is going to be our next little section of FAQs here. So, our first question in the lightning lane section of this FAQ is just the generic, how do lightning lanes work at Disney World? So let's do just a brief overview of lightning lanes at Disney World. Now, these next several questions are all about lightning lanes. Please keep in mind that if you need more information about the multi-pass system, which is the lightning lane system at Disney World, just a few months ago, I did a whole refresher and walked through exactly how to book all of your lightning lanes and where to go and my tips and tricks for it and all of that. Lightning lanes are my thing. When it comes to Disney knowledge, like that is my thing. So if you need help with that, please go to that episode or please reach out to me, momstreetusa@gmail.com, and I am more than happy to help guide you through whatever you need for your lightning lanes. So all of that being said, let's talk about how lightning lanes work at Disney World. So lightning lanes are the time periods that you can book for return times for the rides at Disney. So the entire system is called the multi-pass system or the single pass system at Disney World, two different types of lightning lanes that you can get. But essentially they are a reserved time that you are able to then return to an attraction to ride with a shortened wait. In theory, the wait is supposed to be 15 minutes or less in the lightning lane line. Now, sometimes it varies, right? Sometimes, most of the time, it's a walk on. Occasionally, it'll get backed up and you'll have maybe a little bit longer of a line, but generally speaking, about 15 minutes or less. So you do this all on your app, which is the My Disney Experience app. You will log in there with your same login that you used and same email that you used when you made your reservation, and you should be able to see your information kind of populate in there once you log in. So on your app, you will go to do a pre-selection when you become eligible. The eligibility window depends on if you are staying on property or not. So if you are staying in a Disney resort, you can book your lightning lanes 7 days prior to your check-in day for your Disney resort. If you are staying off property at a Disney Springs resort or an Airbnb or somewhere nearby, you can pre-book 3 days before your first park day. Now, that is going to be the first day that your park ticket becomes eligible, and that date will be printed on your park ticket if you are off property. So whenever you become eligible to book, you will be able to log in. You'll be able to select your day. You'll be able to select your party that you're booking for, the people that you want to do that for. You'll be able to select your park. And then from there, you'll be able to select different rides. Now, I'm not going to get into all of that. Again, go to that Lightning Lane episode that I did a little while back to give you more details on that. But essentially, you'll be able to book 3 Lightning Lanes ahead of time on your multi-pass. The single passes are like little extra add-on rides. There are 5 of them across Disney World property. They are Seven Dwarfs Mine Train, Tron Light Cycle Run, Cosmic Rewind, or Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, Rise of the Resistance, and Flight of Passage. Those 5 are an extra cost. So you can also book those at that same time, but they're just a little bit extra. The multi-pass system ranges anywhere from about $18 a day to about $40 a day, depending on the park and depending on the crowd level for the day. So all of that gets done ahead of time. And then day of, as soon as you redeem one of your lightning lane times when you tap into their little Mickey head tap styles that they have, then you'll be able to book another one. So you can always hold 3 multi-pass rides at a time. And then your single pass rides are one and done. Once you use them, then you're done at that point. So that's kind of the overall of lightning lanes at Disney World. Again, I went into much more in-depth previously on another episode, but that is kind of the basic rundown of how lightning lanes work at Disney World. The next question in our little lightning lane section of our FAQs is lightning lane worth it for families at Disney World? This is, again, a question that I hit in that episode, but this is kind of a complicated blanket answer question, right? There's not just one answer to fit all experiences and all situations. Generally speaking, let's talk about the 4 parks. Animal Kingdom, do I think you need multi-pass? Not right now. There is so much construction in that park, and there are very few rides in that park right now that you really truly don't get a ton for your money at that park. That being said, I would still consider Flight of Passage as the single pass as a good buy-in if you're not going to use multi-pass at that ride or at that park. Sorry. Epcot. I do suggest using it at Epcot if you want Remy, Frozen, and Test Track. If all 3 of those are on your list, then you definitely want to get multi-pass for that park. Hollywood Studios, you definitely need it. You cannot get on all of the big thrill rides at Hollywood Studios without having it. And Magic Kingdom, you need it just for the sheer number of attractions. Now, all of that being said, look at your list of rides at those parks. So you're going to want to take a look at all of the attractions in the parks, figure out which ones you guys want to do and which ones maybe you're going to skip. And that will also help guide you. If you are not a big thrill person, if you don't like roller coasters or thrill rides, and you just want to do some of the dark rides or the slower moving rides, you may not need it. So it really just depends on your party and what attractions you want to do, but also your budget. So on my last trip, we had park hoppers and we were there for several days in the parks. And all we opted to do was one day at Magic Kingdom for lightning lanes and one day at Hollywood Studios for lightning lanes. So those were the 2 parks that we felt like we needed it at the most. Now, that was also though before Test Track opened again at Epcot. So that may have changed things for us in that instance. So I do think it's worth it if it's within your budget. If it's going to break the budget, there are definitely ways that you can get around it. You may just have to understand that your list of attractions you're going to be able to get on is probably going to be smaller at that point. So it just depends on what you're looking for and what you're hoping to get out of the trip as far as the number of attractions and the type of attractions you're going to do. The next question is, do lightning lanes sell out at Disney World? Multi-pass, which is the one that gives you the majority of the rides, sells out on very high capacity days. So holiday weeks, like we just got done with, Christmas and New Year's weeks, multi-pass will sell out at the different parks on those days. Uh, Other days, not as frequently, but if you've got a really, really busy holiday weekend, it could. Disney seems to have adjusted the number of multi-pass that they will sell for the day, more as we have gone into this system now that we're several years into this most recent system that they're using. So I feel like we don't see them sell out as often anymore, but it definitely is still a possibility. So if you're considering it, you really need to make sure you have that decision made before your eligible pre-book date to make sure that you don't miss out. Now, single passes absolutely sell out regularly. So things like those 5 that I listed earlier, Seven Dwarfs, Tron, Cosmic Rewind, Rise of the Resistance, Flight of Passage, those will sell out frequently. Uh, any given day that you look at those particular rides, I would say 2 or 3 of the 5 are likely sold out or will be sold out shortly after park open. So those are definitely ones that you want to pay attention to because those ones will sell out a lot more frequently than the other rides. Let's talk about just a few little line things that kind of are adjacent to lightning lanes. There's a question that gets asked online about what can families do to skip lines at Walt Disney World? And that is our next question on here, which sounds a little silly because we just talked about lightning lanes, but it is a question that gets asked a lot because I think people know about the different passes from the other parks. Like Universal has their express pass, things like that, that are a little bit different. But basically, the only way that you can get a shorter line at Disney World is to purchase that lightning lane. So there's no other way around it. There's no widespread way to completely skip the lines. Either way, you're going to be waiting probably 10 to maybe 15 minutes. And the lightning lane is the only way to do that at this time. So our last question in this little lightning lane and lines section is, what happens if my child is too short for a ride at Disney World? So Disney World has a process called rider switch or rider swap. You'll see those terms used interchangeably when they talk about it on, online and on the website. But basically, what this is a policy that they use so that way, if you've got a group or even just two adults and one child, and the child is too short to ride, you can see the cast member at the entrance gate and they will hook you up with a rider swap time. What will then happen is whoever is waiting with the kiddo will scan their ticket, whether it's a magic band, whether it's a digital ticket or a card ticket. They'll scan their ticket and they'll set them up with what is essentially like a return time for a lightning lane. The other person or people, depending on your group, will then go and get in line. They will wait through the line. They will ride the attraction. When they are done riding, they will exit and rejoin the group that was waiting. Then the adults or older kids or whoever was waiting that didn't get to go will go back to the ride entrance and scan in at the lightning lane. It will show the cast member on their computer that it was a rider switch, and they will let you go through just like it's a lightning lane. So the nice thing is that your group then doesn't have to wait for a second standby time, especially for some of these longer rides, right? You only want to do a 70-minute wait for Tron once, right? You don't want to have to wait for the second half of your party to then do it all over again a second time. So that is a really nice feature that they have that is available, and that is like free of charge. Anybody can utilize that if your kiddo is too short for a ride at Disney World. And that is also the same at all of the other Disney parks. So Disneyland, they have a similar thing. Universal has a similar system with rider swap, where you can kind of just talk to the worker at the beginning of the entrance and go from there. So that is kind of our little 5-question quick lightning lane and line FAQ. The last little section that we're going to talk about today in today's kind of rapid fire, all encompassing one-stop shop FAQs for Disney World is some just kind of general logistic and stroller questions. So that's where we're headed next. So the first question that we have is Disney World stroller friendly? And the easy answer to that is absolutely. 100% Disney World is totally stroller friendly. It is definitely built with strollers in mind. So definitely an easy navigate with that. Do keep in mind when it comes to strollers, Disney does have some stipulations on sizes of strollers, and they have certain dimensions that you have to fall within. Also, keep in mind that wagons are not permitted. So it has to be a true stroller and not a wagon or stroller wagon hybrid or anything like that. So keep that in mind as well when you're looking at what to bring for that. And I did an episode on strollers not that long ago. We also have a great affiliate link for Kingdom Strollers, which is a wonderful stroller rental company down in Orlando. So if you're in need of rental, the link to that can be found in our social media bios. And I'll put that in the show notes for today's episode as well. But definitely lots of great options for rentals if you need it. You're also obviously welcome to bring your own stroller in if you prefer to do that. But yes, Disney World is very, very stroller friendly. The only time it gets a little iffy is like fireworks and things like that. It can be just a little tricky to navigate with strollers, but that's kind of to be expected when everyone is gathered all together at the end of an evening in the parks. So that's the only time that I feel a little like stuck with my stroller, so to speak, is typically during like happily ever after if I'm in the hub or on Main Street with a stroller. It can get a little tricky, but other than that, no issues at all with strollers. The next question, again, just logistics and things to ask about when you're taking kids, is can you bring snacks and food into Disney World? And the answer to that is yes. Disney very much allows any sort of outside food to be brought into their parks. Again, there are always a couple little stipulations with that. You cannot bring any glass, you cannot bring any alcohol, and you cannot bring any loose ice in there. So all ice must be either in a like a Ziploc bag or like a cooler pack or things like that if you've got a little lunchbox or a little cooler tote that you're bringing in. But we frequently pack full, picnic lunches and things to have in the parks to save us a little bit of money and to help ensure that our kids are going to find something that they want to eat. So that is definitely a really great option when it comes to visiting the Disney parks. If you're concerned about food or you've got very particular eaters in your crew, that's something that I love about Disney. So that is definitely an option for you if that is something you want to do. So, the next FAQ for bringing kids to Disney is do kids need park tickets at Disney World and what age is free? So, we talked a little bit about this way at the beginning of this episode, but under 3 is free. So, anybody that is 2 years old, 1 year old, or not quite one, or not one yet, they do not need a ticket. They are free to enter. They can join you on Lightning Lane reservations if they obviously meet the height requirements and things like that. Um, and at any sort of a table service restaurant, they can eat off of your plate for free. So that is kind of the way that that works. Now, once they do hit that 3-year-old mark, they do need a ticket and their own entrance to get into the parks. Disney does have a lower priced option, a little bit lower. It's not that much lower, let's be real. But a lower priced option for kiddo tickets. So ages 3 to 9 get a discount on their tickets. It's usually about $20 per ticket, I wanna say, depending on what you're getting now, right? Like, different amounts of days and different combinations of tickets are different prices, but generally speaking, it's about $20 cheaper for your kiddo to enter the park. But, yes, they do need park tickets, and under 3 is free at Disney World. The next question is what rides at Disney World have no height requirement? Now, here's the thing with this. I'm not going to give you a full giant list because that doesn't do you any good. And here's why I say that. I'm going to give you the knowledge of being able to find this list on your app because that is going to be a much better way to have that list in front of you when you are going through and planning. So, a couple different ways that you can find the ride lists on your My Disney Experience app. But ultimately, you can find that with the lightning lanes or you can find it on the map view. So on your My Disney Experience app, you are going to open it. You are going to go to there's two options along the bottom, which is what I was just saying. If you prefer a map view, along the bottom, there's gonna be that little, like, ovally with a point at the bottom, little pin. Click on that, and then at the top, you're gonna wanna make sure that you've selected which park you're looking at. So, in the filter section, you're gonna select one of the 4 parks. And then along the top, you're gonna select either I would suggest selecting wait times because that's gonna give you a more truncated list of what the actual rides are. So select wait times, and then in the bottom right corner on that app is gonna be a little show list option. That is going to bring you up a list of all of the different rides that you can then click into to view those height requirements. So that is one way in which you're going to be able to find those height requirements in the My Disney Experience app. The other way, and I'm going to double check myself as I'm doing this to make sure that I give you the correct information. The other way is from your home screen, you're going to click the little plus button at the bottom, and then you're going to click view wait times and show times. Again, at the top, you're going to want to make sure that you are navigated to the correct park, whether it's Magic Kingdom, Hollywood Studios, those types of things. And then you're going to want to make sure that you unselect the option that says show only lightning lane experiences. That's what I had to make sure I looked up to make sure I had the right terminology for you guys. Um, because that is going to show you all of the different attractions at that park. From that page, you can actually scroll down through the alphabetical list and see the height requirements. So, for example, if you're in Magic Kingdom, you can scroll through and see that Astro Orbiter is any height because directly underneath it, it says any height. But the next ride down, Barnstormer, is 35 inches for its height requirement. So that will give you another way. Again, you can just scroll down, look through, Dumbo the Flying Elephant is any height. As I keep going, It's a Small World is any height, and keep going down. Most of the rides at Magic Kingdom are any height, but then let's see, I get down to Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and it is 38 inches. So that'll give you a general picture of any of the rides at Disney World that have no height requirement. Like I said, most of the rides at Magic Kingdom do not have a height requirement. Now, on the other opposite end, the majority of the rides at Hollywood Studios do have a height requirement that you have to be aware of. So, even some of the slower rides like Alien Swirling Saucers has a height requirement of 32 inches over there. So, really, your only non height requirement rides over there. Um, are Mickey's Runaway Railway and Toy Story Mania. So, from one extreme to the other, your other parks are gonna be a little bit kind of some that do, some that don't. If I remember correctly, Animal Kingdom, most of them have a height requirement except for the safari? So again, your best bet is to look at that list, look at the rides you want to do, note down what has a height requirement and what doesn't. And that list is also, going back to our lightning lanes earlier, is going to be able to help you determine whether or not you think you're going to need lightning lanes too. So definitely creating that list before you start to look into some of these things like lightning lanes is going to be a really big help for your party. So that's my that's my let me show you how instead of telling you the answer to that when it comes to that FAQ, because I think that is just much more helpful. The other thing you can always do is just a quick Google search of Disney World height requirements and find a list there. But I like to also know where it is in the My Disney Experience app as well. And then our final FAQ for today's episode is, how do naps and rest breaks work at Disney World for kids? And I think this is such a great question to end on because it is so important to think about before you go on your trip. Now, your best bet for naps, bedtime, break time is to do your best to follow your kiddos' normal schedule. So if you've got a little that naps in the morning and the afternoon, hopefully maybe they'll do a stroller nap for you and you can just find a quiet place like we talked about earlier in our when we were talking about if it can be overwhelming or not. Hopefully you can maybe just find a quiet place that they'll be able to continue to nap in the stroller and you won't have to like do a full leave the park, come back situation. A lot of people take afternoon breaks. So you will find that uh, there's a good portion from about 2 to 4 or 5 in the afternoon will take a break. 1, because it's a great nap time. 2, because it's the hottest part of the day and it's a great time to visit the pool. And 3, because especially during the rainy months at Disney World, those are the most frequent times that you will find those pop-up thunderstorms. So all of those things to take into consideration. That time of day in the afternoon is a great time to take a break if you are concerned about that. But really just following their cues, knowing what they need, trying to catch it before we get to the overly tired, cranky situation when it comes to little kiddos is always a good idea. And also just kind of adjusting your own expectations as far as, are we going to make it to fireworks or to the nighttime show, Phantasmic, whatever it may be? Or is that something that like nope, we're going to try that next trip in a few years when they're a little bit older, or maybe you and the other adults traveling in your party can alternate. Okay, I'll take the kids back today to go nap. You guys can go to Luminous, and then, tomorrow night we'll swap and I can go to see Happily Ever After, or, something like that. But you definitely want to make a plan and plan accordingly, but also understand that their rhythm and their normal schedule may or may not work and may or may not be thrown off when you're at the park. So having an idea and then just kind of following their cues is my best advice as far as that goes. Now, logistically, how do naps and rest breaks work? The easiest possible thing at Disney. You don't have to worry about exiting and re-entering the park. You can do that as many times in a day as you need to. The hardest thing about this ultimately is navigating the transportation and getting back to your resort room at a good time, because if you have to take a bus from the park back to your resort, that's probably at least 30 minutes that it's going to take you to wait on the bus, take the bus back, walk back to your room and get there, right? At least 30 minutes, sometimes closer to an hour. It just really depends on, did you catch the bus perfectly timing, or are you stuck waiting at the bus stop for a while? Or are there a lot of people waiting at the bus stop and you have to wait for a second bus to come, which does happen sometimes, especially in the evenings, kind of closer to like fireworks time, that can happen more frequently. In the middle of the afternoon, that doesn't happen quite as often. But all things to keep in mind, we always tried to leave at least an hour before we thought our kiddo needed a nap. So that gave us enough time to get back to the room, get them situated, get them laid down. And then after that, my husband and I would, take turns and shifts going to walk around the resort, or we'd go fill our resort mugs at the quick service restaurant, or we go sit by the pool, or, things like that. So definitely still a ton to do as long as you kind of game plan accordingly when it comes to taking those breaks. But logistically, the transportation is hard, but getting in and out of the parks is super, super easy. These breaks and stuff are really, really easy, especially if you're someone who's staying at one of those resorts that's super close to the park you're at. So if you are within walking distance, that is even better, right? If you're just like a quick monorail ride away at one of the deluxe resorts by Magic Kingdom, that is even much easier for you to navigate. But if you're someone that is going to be taking a bus, the Skyliner's not too bad, but you do still have to likely hop off and get back on again, and kind of do those Skyliner exchanges at that main central hub. But it just really depends on transportation as far as like timing of that goes. But I really do suggest those afternoon breaks. I think they are very important for everyone's mental and physical well-being when you are visiting the Disney parks. So that's kind of my thoughts and opinions on that one. So, all of that being covered now, that is the end of our 15 Disney World FAQs that are the questions that we get asked the most and the questions that I see asked the most online. Now, of course, we didn't cover everything. So if you've got additional questions or you want some more information about things that we talked about today, we would love to hear from you. You can always find us momstreetusa@gmail.com, or you can send us a DM on Instagram or Facebook, or we're also on TikTok and YouTube at Mom Street USA on all of those platforms as well. You can also reach out to us on our Patreon. That is a really good way to get a hold of us as well. And there's some additional information over there. Always sneak peeks about upcoming episodes are posted over on our Patreon account. And we love being able to connect with everyone over there and look forward to your comments and messages over there as well. Coming up on Mom Street, the next episode that we do will be going back to the hub with our good friends Duck and Jess. I'm not 100% sure what they've got planned for us next week, so we'll all be surprised when we get there. But I'm looking forward to reuniting with them for our first hub episode of 2026. But for today, that is it for this episode of Mom Street USA. Thank you guys so much for being here and continuing to support and share our podcast and really just uplift everything we're doing here. Your support is so, so meaningful to all of us, and it is so appreciated. So, thank you guys so much for being here for this episode, and I will catch you on the next episode of Mom Street USA. Bye, everyone.